On the Palo Alto firewall, the Ethernet interfaces, we have Ethernet interfaces, right? The Ethernet interfaces are not defined as either layer 2 or layer 3. They are not defined. They are not defined as either layer 2 or layer 3. When we configure the Ethernet interface, we say if it is layer 2 type of interface or layer 3 type of interface. If it's layer 2 means what? I can keep the interface in some VLAN because acting as what? Switch interface, right? If it's layer 2 in nature means what? Switch interface.
Switching, yes.
So I can configure VLANs and all on this particular interface. If I say it is layer 3, then I could assign it with an IP address and then configure as a routing on this particular interface. So it depending upon what we say, if it defined as layer 2 or layer 3, depending on that, the interface may act as either layer 2 or layer 3. On Cisco routers, interface are defined as what? Layer 3 in nature. So you can go give the IP address, right? As a layer 2 switch, the interface are defined as what? Cisco switches, they're defined as what? Layer 2 interfaces. If it's a layer 3 switch, if it's a layer 3 switch, the interface are by default defined as what? Layer 2. By giving the command no switch port, by giving the command no switch port, you can make it act as what? Layer 3 port, right? And then assign this into an IP address and all you can do. But in the Palo Alto firewall, the interfaces are not defined as either layer 2 or layer 3. Depending upon our
Sorry
requirement.
to interrupt you, sir. Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir, can you please repeat again? I could not. Actually, I was not able to listen voice from the beginning. Sorry
No
to
problem.
interrupt you, sir.
No problem, no problem. I'll repeat again, not a problem. So on the Palo Alto firewall, the Ethernet interfaces are not defined as either layer 2 or layer 3. Right? They are just Ethernet interfaces. They are just what? Ethernet interfaces. They're not defined as either layer 2 or layer 3. On the Cisco layer 2 switches, the interfaces are what? Defined as layer 2. On the Cisco router, the Ethernet interface is what? Layer 3 by default. On the layer 3 switch, on the Cisco layer 3 switch, the interface is defined by default as layer 2. By giving the command no switch port, you are making it act as what? Layer 3 port, right? By giving the command switch port, again you can make it act as what? Layer 2. Right? But on the Palo Alto firewall, the interfaces are defined as just Ethernet interfaces only. They're not defined as either layer 2 or layer 3. You tell the firewall, this interface is layer 2 in nature. This interface is layer 3 in nature. You have to, while you configure the interface, you define the interface type as either layer 2 or layer 3 and then proceed with the configuration. So if at all you define it as layer 3, layer 2 interface means what? There should be a switch, right? This part of what? This interface becomes what? Part of a switch, right? Becomes what? Part of a switch. And if you say it is a layer 3 interface, it becomes what? Part of a router. You understand now? So when you say layer 2, it becomes what? Part of a switch. When you do layer 3, it becomes what? Part of a router. So on the firewall box, on the Palo Alto firewall box, if at all the interface is there, you make it as layer 2. This will become what? Part of a switch. Part of what? A switch. If you say it is layer 3 in nature, this becomes what? Part of a router. Part of what? A router. You understand, no? See now, switching or routing is only what? Functions. What are they? They are simply what? Functions. A switch or a router is not the device. Not the device. You understand, no? IP, what do you mean, like say a router? What do you mean by saying a router? A device is acting as a router. Means what? It does something called as IP forwarding. It does something called as IP forwarding. Right? Router does what? IP forwarding. Now the question is, will only a router act as a router? No, it could be a computer. It might be a system, a computer with Windows Server installed on it, Windows Server OS installed on it. It also can act as a router because it also does what? IP forwarding. A system might be there. It may have, like say, Linux installed on it. Linux. It also can act as a router. Means what? Enable what? IP forwarding. You understand? No? So router is not a device. Router is what? A function. So any device can act as a router. A Windows system can act as a router. A Linux system can act as a router. A layer 3 switch can also act as what? A router. On the layer 3 switch, if you give the command no IP routing, it will not act as router. Only when you give the command IP routing, the layer 3 switch will also start acting as what? A router. A firewall can also act as a router. A load balancer can also act as a router. You understand now? All these are what? Devices with different operating system. And router is not the device. Router is what? A function. A Windows system can act as a router. A layer 3 switch can act as a router. A firewall can act as a router. A load balancer can act as a router. Right? So what is meant by routing? IP forwarding. Means when the packet comes to this particular system, right? The packet comes to any system, what happens now? Say for